welcome to Dawn's on Me. I'm Dawn Kirk, and I am here today with our next guest, which is Sarah McKeen. She is running for House District 51. And so I was hoping that we could learn a little bit more from her about what she's got going on and what is important to her. So, with that, I would love to welcome Sarah. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of this brand new podcast.
Hey, thanks. We've been friends for a while, so this is like actually hard for me to remember the things that other people don't know. So, in order to make sure I don't forget important things, tell us about you, and then we can jump from there.
Sure. So I moved to Loveland about 15 years ago. I guess it's probably almost 16 years now. And I moved here I grew up in Southern Illinois and lived in Indiana, and I was a over the road truck driver for a bit of my life too, which is a fun story if you ever want to ask me about that. Um, and I moved to Loveland when my daughter was 2 years old. I was married to her dad at the time. A couple years into living here, I found myself being a single mom to my daughter, and really struggling financially primarily. I was waiting tables at the time. I was struggling to find safe childcare and, just put a roof over our heads and to be able to pay for rent. It was even expensive back then and put food on the table. So we did as much as we could to try to alleviate that, or I did essentially in that period of time. And I got a lot of help from a lot of local nonprofits, individuals, churches, everything under the sun. If there was somewhere willing to offer help, I was willing to accept it in any way that I could to just try to claw out of poverty because I was, really struggling. And I think what really did it for us was finding Project Self-Sufficiency, which is an amazing program that supports single parents to becoming self-sufficient again. And they helped me to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, to get back to school and to kind of like pick up those pieces. They connected me with Section 8 housing and all kinds of other resources that I could never even fully name all of them. And it truly changed everything for us. I went to Front Range and got my associate's degree, and then followed that up by going to CSU and getting my bachelor's in social work. And I graduated about the time I met my husband, my current husband. We got married shortly after that. I went back to school because degree was not enough for me. I needed more because I love to learn. Went back to school and got my master's degree, graduated at the end of 2020. Also a fascinating story because we all know how that was in 2020. And I think what I figured out through all of that was the thing that really stood out to me about I got both of my degrees in social work was policy. I loved the policy classes that we were required to take. I think I was one of the few people that really connected with policy over some of the other available classes and things that went on with social work. Policy and research primarily were my areas of interest. But since I graduated with my bachelor's, I've been working at Boys and Girls Clubs of Larimer County. That's been almost 8 years now, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I, for the last 3 years, have been on the Loveland Planning Commission, almost over 3 years now, I think. And then Larimer County, one of their behavioral health consumer advisory commissions. I've been sitting on that for about 3 years now, too. So I've been trying as much as I can to find ways to get out there and advocate for people and to learn more about policy and how that impacts my work as a social worker in this community. And then I saw an opening to run for House District 51, and it felt a little wild and a little crazy. And I thought, there's no better way to advocate for my community. This community that gave so much to me at one point in time when I needed it, than to run for this and to hopefully represent this community in Denver next year. So that's like a tiny little quick snippet of me.
This is why we're friends.
Yeah.
To everyone else who's like, oh yeah, now I get it. So there's so many fun things in there, and one of the things that's my favorite is that I mean, I've watched you do like get in there, do things, figure out like what do we need to do, and then just do it. This like can't this like scrappy, I'm gonna figure it out. This needs to be better than this kind of thing is super fun. And so I love that because you've got that as a breadcrumb in everything. But the other thing that I'm really excited about is that, you and I both come from these backgrounds that are often really not doing politics, right? And so to get to do something where y- I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Nobody I know knows how to do this. I mean, I just showed up for a couple committees and eventually it turns into something more.
Yeah.
But we bring this other perspective of having seen things that a lot of people don't experience. It's so priceless. And so um, I'm really grateful that you're doing that and that you're willing to give back with the busy schedule that you have and all the other things that are already things you care for. I love that you saw that the way to keep doing this really well is to go and do it where it had an impact that you can't have now. And so I'd love to hear more about some of those things that are raising up to get you here. Like what's getting you excited when you think about going to Denver?
There's so much, truly. I feel like Loveland has been represented in a way that doesn't represent everyone in Loveland for some time. And especially the Democrats in Loveland, right? We haven't had even a chance in the HD51 race in a very long time. And I think that this is going to be the year to have that chance. And I think it's going to be a good competition, which I'm super excited about. But I also think, I do rely a lot on my personal and professional experiences actually existing in this community. Um, I think that says a lot for how I'll be able to advocate for people because I have so much lived experience. But I also have continued since I had my own struggles, continued to work with the community and know what issues we're facing constantly, even as of right now, right?
Mhm.
Um, Part of the reason that I work at Boys and Girls Clubs because I obviously have a heart for kids and families. I have a child, obviously, I have a heart for kids. I really thought when I first became a social worker, like that was it. I would just work with kids forever. And then I found there's a lot of other issues happening in the community too. Like, how do I get tapped into those at the same time? Which is what lent me over to the Planning Commission. I'm still shocked that they ever accepted me on the commission in the first place because I'm a social worker and what do I know about planning? But the city does a wonderful job of, onboarding people, and I've learned so much in my period of time that uh, I now understand our city's like housing issues and concerns and our citizens in a way that I didn't before.
Yeah.
Same with the Larimer County Behavioral Health Committee that has lent a lot of knowledge about the landscape of behavioral health across not only the county, but the whole state.
Yeah.
So I really hope that all of that can be utilized when I'm up at the state to make a difference. And I think there are so many things that I would love to do when I'm there. It's hard to narrow them down, truly. I think when I first started the campaign, I'm brand new to this process too, right? This is my first ever run for anything. They were like, you should really narrow it down to like three things that are like your main issues. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many.
Yeah. But I think
I
you
would
you did. I mean, even though those
yeah,
are big things that have other things that come out of it,
yeah,
those are still consistent from where you were when we first talked. And so
absolutely.
nice.
I think it really is though, truly, because my social work brain is like all of these things are interconnected, right? So like when we talk about housing, that's interconnected with healthcare, it's interconnected with education, that's interconnected with our workforce, with all of those things, right? Like our senior population wants to downsize, our younger families want to purchase houses for the first time. Um, all of those things are impacting like large groups of people across the board. And it's hard for me to separate my brain from like just focus on this one thing because they're all interconnected. They're all impacting each other and they're all impacting every single one of us, I truly believe. So what I tried to do was to think about what people have talked to me about being the biggest issues within Loveland. So those are things that really stuck with me. I think my top three landed on housing. Obviously, housing is the biggest issue across the state, right? I don't know if there's anywhere in Colorado right now that's not struggling with some sort of housing. And we need affordable housing, not just housing, affordable housing. That's the key, right? Because we are building more and more and more, and it's still not meeting the needs of the people that actually live here. Second one being healthcare, because and that includes like physical and behavioral health. I think I've struggled in the healthcare industry myself with my own personal struggles in managing insurance and understanding the processes and advocating for myself and others. I've recently had to advocate for my own daughter in a way that I was like, this is insane that this is so difficult, you know? Um, so finding ways to just make all of that more accessible and easier to manage for just everyone in the community. Education being another one. Obviously, it's hard to steer away from that. You know this more than most everybody, right? But working with kids for so long and thinking about the impact education has had on my own life and how my life completely changed when I got a college education, those things are always going to be important to me. And I think accessible education, but also when we're thinking of the big scheme of things, like there's so many things we could continue to do to support our school districts, right? Our teachers, violence in schools, and the struggles that teachers and students are having learning in those spaces anymore. So those are just like some of my main topics, but there's a lot of other things that I know a ton about childcare and behavioral health, and I would love to do some more in terms of supporting our seniors in this community. That's a large population of Loveland, so it's an important part.
Yeah, thank you for all that. And I do really love that you started with the like why you see them all being interconnected because it's not every day that somebody who has the ability to think in that broad of a way and have really done the work in that broad of a way is often has the bandwidth. I mean, frankly, social workers are so busy that usually they don't time to to go like pop their head up and actually do this other thing with it. And so it's nice to
Yeah.
see because I mean some really great things are done when we have the ability to understand the ripples and like how do we go upstream? Where can we have the biggest impact if we're only going to be able to do so much in one year
Mhm.
and with so much funds, which is a real thing that happens, having that
Yep.
ability to hone in on this is what's going to get us there the best is really nice to like can't wait to have that be something that is happening for our house representative and
Yeah.
right now. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
I'm well versed in prioritization because I've I've had to do it in my own life, but also just in working with people. Something you just said made me think. One of the first things I learned in school and at CSU for social work was looking at every single person as their person in their environment and how every aspect of their environment impacted that person and their ability to do anything, right? Like their capacity, their ability to like even show up to an appointment or to move forward with this program when they didn't have this thing, but you had to consider all of those things. And I think that was my first introduction to like, there's all of this is truly intersected and it's impacting each and everything in ways that we can't even always see, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I is so helpful, right? Because I do think that I know I've done it and I can't even tell you how many times where I'm like, oh yeah, we're just gonna solve it with this thing. And that's great when that happens. I love low hanging fruit kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
know, you have to. But there's something about, that ability to say, okay, yes, but we have this meeting at a time that nobody can be there. We might as well not even have it. If we made this available, but nobody can get there, or it's, whatever that is, it
Right.
matters. And, I think the piece of having the view into all of Lerner County in the committees that you've had, see that differently when you realize what that means to people, um, as like parents, right? I mean, getting
Yeah.
spread thin, working, and then and I'm really stressed out about how I'm going to pay for it. And I'm really trying to figure out where my kid's going to go and be
Right.
busy for the day and enriched and all of that because I care. How am I going to get there? Like each of these things starts to touch on it. It's not much different really when we adjust for age. It's still, what am I going to do? How am I still going to make sure my family's safe and that I have something to do
Yeah.
with my time that feels good? And so the
Yeah.
environment matters.
It's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Mhm.
We built a program at Boys and Girls Club, a social emotional learning program off of that concept last summer because what we found was like the kids were having the hardest time talking about their feelings and emotion because they were hungry, because they just needed to eat something. And then once we added in a component of food, it really like helped bring the conversation to a whole nother level. It's wild how when you just consider all of those other things, it makes a world of difference. I think about that when I think I'd love to connect this to like working at the house. Um, it's interesting because I keep track of all the stuff that's going through there in the Senate and like what's going on and what's being asked of individuals and cities and so on and so forth and what's being pushed through. And I think the perspective that I get from a lot of that is like ensuring that when I'm creating a bill or when I'm making a decision on anything, that I'm getting feedback from other people that are actually doing it. Sometimes we ask that our school districts or our cities make a huge change without the understanding that they can actually make that change or that they have the funding to make that change
Right.
and what that looks like. And I think, again, you have to consider how all of those things play against each other or together. And is this the best move for, our district and the state in that way? So,
Mhm. Hmm. I'm I'm very much looking forward to seeing you do this work. I've enjoyed it. I mean, and I know you've tackled some interesting things in the time that you've been on these committees, right? It wasn't just putting some permits through and seeing if somebody wants to build a shed in their backyard. That those it's been a busy time, right? I mean, it's probably the busiest we've ever had in our city. And then you've had complicated things, politically charged things. The
mhm,
committee has had a very interesting makeup over some of its experiences, right? You guys ended up being the epicenter of whether we should be in putting church and state back together in the same seat,
there.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's the little things. The behavioral health center was built in your time on the county commission,
Mhm.
which is the first in the nation, and this wildly successful, albeit just the beginning of what we need thing,
No, I
right?
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because I'm now on the planning commission for Loveland, right? I'm the person that's been on the commission the longest at this point in time out of the whole group. And I often will reference when I first started. Well, it was the end of 2020 when I first started, and so we were having all virtual meetings at that time. And I didn't actually get to meet any of the other folks from the commission for some time That was when Pat McFall was the chair, and then Weinberg came on after him as chair. And no one ever came to our meetings, even when we came back in person at first. Like there was never any like citizen input. Occasionally we would get a letter or something along those lines. But over the last over the last year or two, year and a half maybe, it is wild the change that has happened, right? People are suddenly advocating for themselves in a way that I was not seeing before, and I love it. I love the interaction. I love the feedback. Like I feel like we make better decisions as a commission, like as individuals, when we hear from the citizens, right? And so sometimes it makes for some really long meetings, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I wish more people would continue to come to all of our meetings, but there have been a lot of wild things that have come up over the last year or so. So it's
Hmm.
been interesting, and I hope my voting record, showcases my thoughts on all of that.
I love it. I do. I want to highlight that the ability you have to really work with everybody is one of my favorites. It's fun to watch and learn since you are so much better at it than I am. I soak it up. Um, and so really important when it comes to the fact that we have no idea what the makeup will look like, in,
Mhm.
right? You've got this long history of dealing with, um, really like charged things that people care a lot about. They have really big feelings and opinions about. And, you're working with people with all of those different varying thoughts, and you're able to navigate it. I think anytime that somebody's working with kids, you that gets pushed on real fast, right? Even if you
Mhm.
didn't do social work, if
Mhm.
just anytime that you are working with people's children, you get that feeling of everything's really important. So you've practiced it in like all these different views. And I think that's going to be really nice considering that, um, in my opinion, quite clearly, I worry about how hard that is. I notice it because it's hard for me. I have to work at, you know, like getting out of my own head and worried about my own stuff. And also, I think it's hard when people are this concerned about things. So, like it's hard to get out of your own head when you are worried that something is going to be hard. And so, I appreciate having watched you do that with a bunch of different things in a bunch of different ways. It's the skill set you carry forward, regardless of the content. So,
Yeah.
I say that for everybody who's in the middle, knowing that our area is mostly people who are in
Mhm.
the middle. um, that's one of the big things I think, um, that you bring
Yeah.
to the table that I have rarely seen anyone do it as well as you do. And so people who are worried about the climate and being heard and being practical and getting, junk out of the way, it's something you just do. Like you get why people are care. You get why this is a big deal. You get why something is people might feel differently than you do, and still you like dig in. And so I just felt like I needed to say that as a cheerleader.
Yeah, I grew up in a very I grew up in Southern Illinois, and anyone that knows about Illinois knows this anything below Chicago is not anything like Chicago. It's all very conservative. And it was like essentially growing up in the South, everyone had an accent. We were 5 hours from Chicago. My whole family, a good chunk of my family is still very conservative. And we still talk about all of these things on a pretty regular basis. I was just having a conversation with my dad yesterday about his tire factory experience and unions and what that looked like and, what he thought about it, right?
Mhm.
I think one of the best testament for me was one of our commissioners that started around the same time I did, Mark Zube, planning commissioner. As he was ending his tenure, the last meeting we had together, he came over to me and said, "I just wanted to talk to you really quick." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Sarah, I think that you and I are on the exact opposite ends of the political spectrum. And I was like, oh no, where is this going? Like, right? And I was like, okay. And we don't really talk about that on the commission generally, right? And I was like, okay. And he was like, but I just want to thank you because I feel like we have been able to work so well together over this last 3 years. And I feel like we really listen to one another and we're able to like come up with solutions and move forward. And I did this like physically, I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a compliment because that is what I hope to do. I don't want to dismiss anybody's ideas or feelings or thoughts if they differ from mine. Sometimes, a lot of times, I learn a lot from other people by them sharing their ideas and thoughts with me. So
Mhm.
I would never dismiss them, whether I agreed with them or not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate seeing it in action.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty precious to have somebody who really does just feel like like you really do want to connect and hear from everybody and
Yeah.
do the work like to figure things out and not just hear it and go that's nice and thanks and like you take these things on and figure out how to make things better because of it and it's nice to see. So
Yeah.
as I imagined, this was going to go really fast because, um, like, first off, like talked about a bunch of things I really care about, and we could probably dive into any one of them, and I want to. So that's something we should do because I think, you do bring some other things that people around here may not know, right? I mean, all these resources, it's
Yeah.
amazing what happens. We have like some of the best resources around here. And yet,
Truly.
like, it's
Truly.
the job of trying to figure out, connect the people to the resources is a constant thing. And so, like, I'd love to have you share some of those experiences so that people understand what's available. And
Yeah.
also, the other thing that is important is that you are running a race where there's for sure a race.
Yeah.
I've talked to some other people where they're like, I don't know if I'm going to even really have anything. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Not in your case. We know that there is a
Yeah.
need to get involved. So there are definitely opportunities for people to hear from you, learn from you, question, find out more, get involved so you can tell your neighbors. What's the
Hmm.
easiest way for people to do any of those things?
You go to the website. So my website is www.mckeen, and it's spelled MCKEEN for Colorado.com. Not Hugh McKeen, Sarah McKeen. We're different people, different families.
Mhm.
Just to clarify, that's the easiest way to find information. You can shoot me a message right from there. You can sign up for our email list. We usually send a weekly email out that has upcoming volunteer opportunities. And most importantly, you can donate right there. And donations are a big part of winning this election because I know it's going to be at play here. So we
Yeah.
need any and all help we can get.
Yeah. I'm going to mention something again that you started with that I probably need to be saying all the time for the next few months, right? Which is that you're competing in a race that we Dems have never really had an, a chance. And
Chance.
I feel like this is for sure a chance. We have this opportunity to look at two different people with two different skill sets and figure out, how do we want to be represented? Um, for those of us who have felt like we haven't been well represented in a long time, I'm very excited about what that means to us. Um, for people who don't know the area well, to those of you who are new, there's we live in this very fascinating little pocket of Colorado, and you can't take anything for granted in this stuff, right? People don't know kind of all the things that are show up in our politics that just don't feel like they align with everyday living. And so you want to get involved and make sure that things end up like we all end up being represented instead of just a few.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. Um, any final words until our next one?
I just want to say thank you again. I appreciate your time, Dawn, but also you mentioned this earlier. We've been friends for a very long time, and I think you said at my announcement event, I'm not even really sure how it started, and I'm not either. Um, but I think we quickly connected, and I knew that you were someone that I could, talk to about all of this stuff and have a conversation with. You were one of the first people I talked to when I was thinking about making this run. So I appreciate you and your time and truly anyone and everyone that's willing to listen to me blabber on for 30 minutes or more. I appreciate your time because I will talk forever. And if you want to reach out to me, I'll talk forever to anyone. So,
I love that. I'm laughing because we're getting a thunderstorm and it's gotten darker and darker. It's basically like
yes,
in the I don't even know. If I didn't have the
I
little light on,
know.
we'd have nothing. So sorry about that, everyone. But um, thank you so much for saying that. You're very kind. And for those of you who want to get involved and learn, I think getting involved with Sarah's campaign is a great one. It's a really important one in Larimer County right now. Soon it'll be one of the races that is very, very busy. So we need people. And so check out her website to find out more, get involved, learn more. And I'm sure we'll have you back on at some point soon. And I can't wait to see you.
All righty. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Paid for by the Larimer County Democratic Party, 604 South Mason Street, Fort Collins, Colorado 80524, 970-689-6391. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.